In the heart of New Orleans, a door waits, a door that opens at midnight, and those who enter never return. Their blood taken, their souls trapped. Dare you step closer? The door of blood is hungry, and it remembers your name.
New Orleans' French Quarter was a city of shadows, its narrow streets and brick buildings whispering stories of centuries past. But among all the aged houses and decaying mansions, one building stood out, a crumbling red-bricked house at the corner of Rue Royale and a dimly lit alley. The locals avoided it. Even during the day, it seemed to absorb the sunlight, leaving the surrounding pavement eerily gray. At night, it was something else entirely. They said the door appeared ordinary during the day, a rotting oak frame with rusty hinges, but when the clock struck midnight, it moved on its own. It creaked, groaned, and slowly swung open as though inviting some unseen visitor inside. Anyone who crossed that threshold never returned.
Ryan Miller was a young historian and urban explorer with a popular YouTube channel devoted to haunted locations. He loved the thrill of uncovering secrets, the kind that made viewers shiver in their seats. When he heard whispers about the old New Orleans house, he knew he had found the ultimate story. He wanted to document the door that stole people's lives, the legend of the Door of Blood, and maybe, just maybe, catch something no one else had dared to record. That evening, Ryan walked through the French Quarter's twisting lanes, his camera equipment slung over his shoulder. The city hummed with nightlife, jazz drifting through open windows. But as he approached the house, the sounds of the quarter seemed to die down. Even the usual chatter of late-night tourists faded into silence. He stopped a few steps away from the red brick facade, staring at the ominous wooden door. It was bigger than he imagined, its surface scarred and chipped as if countless hands had scratched at it over decades. There was a strange, almost imperceptible shimmer in the wood, as if it breathed. Ryan shivered despite the humid summer air. He set up his camera tripod, checking the lenses and adjusting the focus. "This is it," he muttered to himself, pressing record. The Door of Blood. He noticed faint scratches on the steps leading up to the threshold. The locals had claimed these marks were made by people who tried to escape but never made it. Ryan bent closer, running a gloved finger over one of the deep gouges. The wood was unnaturally cold, almost icy, even in the sweltering heat. As midnight approached, a soft wind stirred the alley, carrying a faint metallic scent, like iron. Ryan's pulse quickened. He whispered to his camera, narrating the story, describing the legends he had researched. People who vanished without a trace. Bloodless bodies found elsewhere. Shadows moving behind windows where no one lived. Then the door groaned. It was subtle at first, a low creak that could have been any old wood settling. But the sound grew, rhythmic, deliberate. Ryan froze. The door swung open slightly, a crack just wide enough to reveal darkness inside. He could see nothing past the threshold, only a void that seemed to suck the dim streetlight into it. Taking a deep breath, Ryan stepped forward. His boots clicked on the warped wooden floorboards. The air inside was different, heavier, colder, and sharp with the scent of iron. He pointed his flashlight at the walls, revealing faded wallpaper peeling in long strips, dust motes floating like tiny ghosts. Then he heard it, a whisper. It was faint at first, so soft he thought he might have imagined it. But it grew louder, almost forming words. "Come, closer." The voice was female, melodic and chilling at once. Ryan's heart pounded, but he reminded himself it was probably a prank by locals or maybe the acoustics of the house. He pressed forward. The flashlight beam trembled in his hands. The hallway seemed longer than it should have been, stretching deeper into darkness with no visible end. Shadows clung to the corners like thick smoke. Then he saw it, on the wall, faint and wet-looking. Streaks of what appeared to be blood forming words. "Welcome! Join us!" Ryan's breath caught. He raised his camera and whispered, This is real." The room beyond seemed to pulse with a life of its own, shadows moving in patterns that defied logic. The door shut behind him with a soft click that echoed like a gunshot in the silence. Panic surged. He spun around, trying the door handle, but it wouldn't budge. The whispers intensified, now surrounding him from all directions. "Closer! Stay! Join us!" The words overlapped, a chorus of voices. His flashlight flickered, casting long, grotesque shadows along the walls. Shapes moved in the corners of his vision, faces without features, hands reaching from the darkness. Ryan forced himself to step forward, documenting everything, his instincts screaming that he should run, but also that something wanted him to see this. He noticed a staircase leading down into a basement. The air smelled sharper here, ironier. He descended slowly, each step groaning under his weight, the darkness below seeming infinite. At the bottom, he found a small room, lit by a dim, unnatural red glow that seemed to emanate from nowhere. In the center was a circle of old, rusted furniture, chairs overturned, and a rug stained dark as if soaked in blood. And there, in the shadows, he saw them. Figures, hunched and unmoving at first, then slowly turning toward him. They were pale, gaunt, their eyes hollow, and their lips moved, whispering in unison. "Your blood belongs to us." Ryan stumbled back, fumbling for the flashlight. It fell and clattered to the floor, the beam spinning wildly across the room. One figure stepped closer, its movements unnatural, jerky yet deliberate. Its hand reached out and Ryan felt a pull, like invisible fingers gripping his chest. He fought, screaming, trying to wrench himself free. Then the door above banged open. A gust of wind rushed in, carrying with it the sounds of the city outside. Ryan scrambled, crawling toward the stairs. When he reached the bottom step, he looked back, and the figures were gone. Only the dark red stains remained, wet and glistening like fresh blood. Panting, Ryan ran up the stairs, bursting through the front door as the city's normal sounds returned. The door swung shut behind him, solid and unyielding, leaving no sign that it had ever been open. He didn't stop running until he reached the safety of a nearby cafe, where people sat unaware of the horrors mere feet away. But even then, the whispers followed him. Every reflection, every shadow seemed to flicker with the presence of that house. Ryan knew he had escaped, but he had seen something no one else had, and he understood the legend wasn't just a story. It was a warning. The door of blood waited, patient, hungering, and it would open again for the next curious soul who dared cross its threshold. Ryan didn't sleep that night. Even in his apartment, the city's normal sounds, sirens, distant jazz, passing cars, felt distorted, as though echoing from somewhere else. Shadows seemed to linger longer than they should, and every reflective surface caught fleeting images he couldn't explain. The red stains, the whispers, the hollow eyes of those figures haunted him. By morning, he had made a decision. He had to go back, not out of curiosity this time, but to understand, to uncover why the door took people, why it hungered for blood, and perhaps to find a way to stop it. He armed himself with more than just his camera. Flashlights, gloves, a crowbar, even a small vial of holy water he'd bought on a whim at a French quarter shop. Night fell again over New Orleans, thick and humid, the streets slick with the recent rain. Ryan approached the house with caution, avoiding eye contact with anyone who might be around. The locals seemed nervous, avoiding the house themselves, whispering about the blood door and those who had disappeared. He ignored their warnings. When he reached the door, it was waiting, silent, still, but he could feel it, an unnatural presence, like a heartbeat emanating from the wood itself. He raised his camera, checking the angles, and whispered, "Here we go again." The door groaned, swinging open on its own, wider this time. Ryan stepped through, the same metallic scent filling his lungs. The hallway stretched before him, longer than memory suggested. The walls pulsed subtly, as if alive. Whispers brushed the edges of his mind. "Closer, stay." This time he moved with purpose. He didn't panic, didn't run. He followed the sounds. The warmth of the blood scent, the subtle tremor in the air that guided him deeper into the house. The staircase to the basement loomed ahead. He descended slowly, aware of every creak, every shadow, every breath. The basement had changed. The circle of furniture, the rug soaked in dark red stains, all remained, but there were new things. Candles burned on the floor, though they emitted no flame, only a faint red glow. Symbols were carved into the walls, strange sigils that seemed to twist when he looked directly at them. And then he saw the figures. They were closer now, pale, gaunt, their hollow eyes fixed on him. But this time, they weren't just moving. They were speaking, their whispers merging into a single horrible voice. "You saw. You came. Your blood." Their mouths moved in sync, their bodies tilting unnaturally, jerking as though pulled by invisible strings. Ryan tried to keep his composure. He lifted the vial of holy water and threw it at one of the figures. It dissolved into a scream, vanishing into the shadows, but the others advanced. He ran, backing toward the stairs, trying to make sense of it. His flashlight flickered violently. The basement seemed infinite, the exit receding as he ran. Then he noticed something new, a door behind the circle of chairs, small and almost invisible. It pulsed with the same unnatural shimmer as the front door. Desperation guided him. He ran to it, pushing it open. Inside was a narrow passage lined with mirrors. Reflections of himself stared back, but not quite right. Some were pale, hollow-eyed versions, mimicking his movements with a delay. He realized with terror that these mirrors were traps, holding fragments of the souls the door had taken before. A whisper behind him. "Your turn." He spun around, but the basement was empty, except for shadows crawling along the walls like living ink. Ryan understood. The door didn't just take blood. It trapped pieces of the soul, feeding on life itself, storing it within the house. And now, it wanted him whole. He ran through the mirror passage, each reflection stretching, distorting. Some reflected his fear, some his curiosity, and some his death. He stumbled into a room beyond the mirrors, a library filled with ancient blood-stained books. One book lay open on a pedestal, pages turning on their own. The words glowed faintly red. "Only the brave can survive. Only the blood willing to flow may pass." The figures from before appeared in the library surrounding him. Hollow eyes, jerking movements, whispers merging into a cacophony of commands. "Join. Stay. Blood." Ryan realized that escape required sacrifice or cunning. He grabbed the book, scanning pages filled with cryptic instructions, sketches of symbols and rituals. One phrase stood out. "Speak the name, offer the first drop, and the door's hunger may pause." He understood the risk. Offering his own blood might appease the door long enough to escape, but hesitation could mean death. Heart pounding, he pricked his finger with the edge of his crowbar. A drop of blood fell onto the pedestal. The figures recoiled, hissing, their forms flickering. The mirrors cracked simultaneously, letting out screams that echoed through the basement. The red glow dimmed, and the oppressive presence lifted slightly. Ryan bolted, retracing his steps through the shattered mirrors, down the narrow passage, past the pulsing basement walls. The front door loomed ahead. With a desperate push, he burst through it, collapsing onto the wet sidewalk outside. The city sounds returned, normal and indifferent, yet the lingering metallic scent remained in his nostrils. He didn't stop running until he reached the nearest police station, breathless and shaking. Officers looked at him, confused, as he tried to explain. But there was no proof, only the memory of shadows, whispers, and the blood-stained book he had left behind. Days later, Ryan reviewed his footage. The front door of the house was captured, swinging open by itself, but the interior, only darkness. And in the corners of every frame, he noticed faint, shadowy figures, their hollow eyes tracking him. He understood now. The door of blood didn't just wait for curious souls. It remembered them. It hunted them. And it would open again for the next brave or foolish soul who thought they could uncover its secrets. Even writing this, Ryan feels the pull, the soft whisper at the edge of his hearing. "Come, closer, your blood." And he knows deep down that some doors never truly close. The city of Chicago had its secrets, some buried under layers of asphalt and concrete, and others hidden behind the hollowed walls of abandoned buildings. Among the most whispered about places was an old laboratory on the edge of the city, a place that locals had long stopped visiting, a building whose windows stared blankly like dead eyes, and whose doors were chained and rusted shut. It was called the Spirit Laboratory, though no one alive could say exactly who had given it that name. Some claimed it was because of the experiments once conducted there. Others said it was because of the spirits that lingered within, restless and hungry for attention. Decades ago, the laboratory had been a hub of scientific curiosity. Researchers in white coats had walked its hallways, speaking in hushed tones about projects so secret that even the government had kept its distance. They experimented on the boundaries between life and death, searching for ways to preserve consciousness, to manipulate the essence of the human soul. But as years passed, whispers of tragedy began to filter out.
Reports of missing researchers, sudden deaths, and inexplicable accidents piled up. One night, the lab simply shut down. The doors were locked, the windows boarded, and the city forgot it existed, except perhaps for the shadows that refused to leave. It was said that at night, the laboratory woke again. Those brave or foolish, enough to venture near its rusted gates, would hear soft, almost inaudible whispers carried by the wind. Some claimed to see flickers of light behind the cracked windows, shadows moving where none should exist.
But the most chilling tales came from those who had stepped inside. They spoke of cold, unnatural drafts that carried the faint scent of antiseptic and decay. They felt unseen eyes following them, the floorboards groaning under weight that wasn't their own. And always there were the whispers, sometimes pleading, sometimes angry, sometimes incomprehensible, coming from empty corners and dark corridors. Evelyn Harper, a young journalist with a penchant for the obscure, had first heard of the lab from an elderly neighbor who recalled its heyday. Unlike the others who had walked away after the first scare, Evelyn's curiosity burned stronger with every warning. She wanted to document the Spirit Laboratory for her blog, to uncover the story that Chicago's history books had ignored. She packed her camera, a flashlight, and a notebook and set out just before midnight, her heart racing with anticipation. The building loomed in the darkness like a monument to forgotten knowledge. Its brickwork, once pristine, was now crumbling, vines crawling up its sides as if nature itself was trying to reclaim it. The chain on the main gate was rusted but weak, and with a loud creak, Evelyn pushed it open. A gust of cold air greeted her, carrying a whisper she could almost understand. "Leave, while you can!" She shivered but pressed on. Inside, the laboratory was a mausoleum of the past. Broken glass crunched under her feet, and the walls were lined with old equipment, some shattered, some still mysteriously intact. The smell of mildew was strong, mingled with something faintly metallic, almost like blood. Evelyn shone her flashlight across the room and froze. A figure, barely visible, translucent, stood in the far corner. She blinked, and it was gone. Only the faint whisper remained, curling around her ears like smoke. "Help! Us!" Despite the fear gnawing at her, Evelyn moved deeper into the building. Her camera captured long hallways filled with shadows that didn't match the light, staircases that creaked with invisible steps, and walls covered in strange, faded writing, notations and diagrams that spoke of experiments that should have been impossible. There were sketches of human anatomy intertwined with geometric shapes, numbers that seemed to make no sense, and cryptic phrases like "preserve the essence" and "the soul persists." Hours passed, though she had no way of knowing. Time felt distorted, as if the laboratory existed outside the normal world. Occasionally, she would catch movement in her peripheral vision, a fleeting silhouette darting across a doorway, a shadow that didn't belong to any object. She began to hear voices, soft, urgent, overlapping. At first she thought it was in her head, a trick of the imagination, but the whispers grew coherent. "Don't leave. Stay. Finish it." They were coming from everywhere and nowhere. In one of the main chambers, Evelyn discovered the remnants of the lab's original experiments. Tables lined with broken instruments, glass jars containing what looked like preserved organs, and strange machines with dials and levers covered in rust. One machine in particular drew her attention, a cylindrical device covered in frost, humming faintly. It seemed almost alive. She reached out to touch it, and a jolt of energy surged through her fingers, sending visions flashing through her mind. Flashes of researchers screaming, shadowy figures moving across the floors, and a strange glowing light emanating from the cylinder. She recoiled, gasping for breath. It was then that she realized the truth. The laboratory itself was alive with the echoes of the past. The spirits of those who had died there, trapped in unfinished experiments, roamed the halls endlessly. Some were angry, some were confused, and some were desperate to communicate. Evelyn felt their presence pressing against her, cold and insistent. She wanted to flee, but the whispers had taken on a pleading tone. "See, understand, remember." In the final chamber she explored that night, Evelyn found a wall entirely covered in names, scratched into the plaster. At first they seemed random, but she noticed dates beside each one, dates of death spanning decades. Some names were familiar,
Old newspaper clippings came to mind, stories of researchers who had vanished without explanation. And then she saw something that made her blood run cold. Her own name, freshly carved into the wall, as if the laboratory had been waiting for her all along. A whisper circled her head, sharp and urgent. "You belong here. Now." Fear surged through her, primal and paralyzing. Every instinct screamed to run, but as she turned toward the exit, she realized she could no longer see the doorway. The hallway stretched impossibly, twisting in ways that defied logic. Shadows moved independently of any light source. The voices grew louder, overlapping into a cacophony of pleading, screaming, and warning. Evelyn stumbled forward, her flashlight flickering as if struggling against the dark. The laboratory was no longer just a building. It was a trap, a living entity that fed on curiosity, locking its victims in an eternal spectral experiment. And yet, despite the fear, she felt compelled to keep moving, to record, to understand. The whispers beckoned her deeper, into rooms she had not seen, into experiments that had never ended. Somewhere in the shadows, she sensed a presence watching her closely, an intelligence left behind by those who had tried to conquer death, now guiding or perhaps trapping her within the spirit laboratory. The night stretched endlessly, and Evelyn's camera captured every shadow, every flicker of light, every whisper that rose from the walls. And as the first hint of dawn began to touch the city outside, the lab seemed to sigh, releasing a wave of cold air that pushed her toward the exit, though she could not be certain whether it was mercy or preparation for the next night, when the spirit laboratory would awaken again. Evelyn stumbled into the faint morning light, gasping, her hands trembling as she clutched the camera. The city outside seemed impossibly normal, unaware of the horrors that lurked just behind the walls. She had escaped. For a moment, she thought she had survived, that the nightmare was over. But the whispers had not left. They lingered at the edge of her mind, faint but insistent, like a melody that refused to end. Every shadow on the street, every reflection in a shop window, carried the memory of the laboratory's dark presence. Back in her apartment, Evelyn reviewed the footage she had captured. The images made her skin crawl. Shadows moved with a life of their own, objects subtly shifting between frames, and in one shot, a translucent figure reached toward her, its face twisted in anguish. She realized that the laboratory had not only been alive, it had recorded her presence as if she were part of its experiments. Her pulse quickened as the realization hit. The spirit laboratory had not let her go. It had marked her. Days passed, but Evelyn could not shake the feeling of being watched. At first, it was small things, misplaced objects, fleeting movements in the corner of her vision. Then, the whispers returned, more coherent this time. At night, they spoke her name clearly, calling her back to the lab. "You are part of it now. Come back. Finish what was begun." She tried to ignore them, to bury herself in work and friends, but sleep was elusive, and the shadows grew bolder. Driven by a mix of fear and fascination, Evelyn began researching the lab's history. Newspaper archives, old police reports, and forgotten medical journals told a chilling story. The laboratory's founder, Dr. Leonard Hawthorne, had been obsessed with the idea of capturing the human soul, separating consciousness from the physical body and preserving it indefinitely. His experiments had been highly secretive, and when accidents began to accumulate, the lab was closed abruptly. But Hawthorne's final project, a machine designed to tether souls to the physical world, had never been destroyed. It still pulsed somewhere in the darkness of the spirit laboratory, feeding on life, curiosity, and fear. Compelled by both dread and curiosity, Evelyn knew what she had to do. She returned to the lab one night, armed with cameras, recording devices, and a notebook filled with warnings she had scrawled from the accounts of previous victims. The gate creaked open as before, and the cold air enveloped her, carrying the faint metallic scent she had come to associate with the spirit's presence. The whispers greeted her immediately, circling around her in a chorus of pleading, warning, and anger. "We are waiting. We never left. You cannot escape." Inside, the lab seemed even more alive than before. Shadows slithered across walls, following her every movement. The tables and machines, once inert, hummed faintly with an energy that defied explanation. The cylinder, The device that had first shocked her fingers sat in the center of the main chamber, glowing faintly with a sickly green light. She approached it cautiously, noting that the air around it felt dense, almost liquid with energy. The whispers became a roar. "Finish! Release! Join us!" Evelyn realized that the spirits were not merely haunting the laboratory. They were trapped experiments themselves, fragments of consciousness tethered to Hawthorne's machine. Each shadow, each whisper, each fleeting vision was a soul imprisoned, unable to move on, seeking someone to understand or continue what had been begun. She felt a mix of horror and empathy. These were not malevolent entities in the traditional sense. They were victims, and yet their desperation had made the lab itself dangerous, alive with the energy of their unrest. Gathering her courage, Evelyn began documenting everything: the cylinder's mechanisms, the notes on the walls, the patterns of the shadows. But as she worked, she felt herself being drawn into the machine's energy field. Her vision blurred, and she saw herself reflected in the translucent forms surrounding her. In that moment, she understood the truth fully. The laboratory did not just record souls, it consumed them, integrating curiosity and consciousness into its eternal experiment. Her presence was feeding it, just as the presence of past researchers had. Panic surged. She tried to flee, but the hallways stretched impossibly, twisting in ways that made escape impossible. Shadows blocked every exit, the whispers intensifying into screams. Then, suddenly, she found herself back in the chamber with the cylinder. It pulsed with a hypnotic rhythm, as if aware of her fear, aware of her will. Her mind was drawn to it, her body almost unwillingly moving closer. The spirits around her pressed in, not violent but insistent, begging her to understand their plight, their suffering, their endless cycle. Evelyn realized there was a choice. She could leave, perhaps barely escaping, carrying the horror with her forever. Or she could complete the final experiment, risking her own soul to liberate the trapped spirits, or become one with the laboratory herself. Her hands hovered over the controls, trembling. The whispers were deafening now, a chorus of hope, warning, and accusation. "Decide! Free us! Or join us!" With a deep, shuddering breath, she activated the cylinder. Light erupted, green and blinding, filling the chamber and every shadowed corner of the lab. The air vibrated with the screams and sighs of centuries of trapped souls. Evelyn felt herself lifted, not physically, but in essence, her consciousness stretching across time and space within the laboratory's vast network. She saw the researchers, the failed experiments, the countless souls tethered to the machine, all converging toward her awareness. It was overwhelming, terrifying, and strangely illuminating. Then, as abruptly as it began, the light vanished. Evelyn collapsed to the floor, gasping, the chamber now silent. The shadows were gone. The whispers had faded. She rose slowly, her body intact, her mind reeling. The cylinder lay dormant, as though spent. The names scratched into the walls no longer glowed. The spirits, it seemed, had been released, or at least something like release had been achieved. Evelyn stumbled out into the early morning light. The city was quiet, normal, unknowing. She looked back at the spirit laboratory, its windows dark and empty, and for the first time in decades, it seemed simply like an abandoned building. She carried with her the evidence, the recordings, the story of what had occurred, but also a lingering awareness that some part of her, perhaps her curiosity, had been woven into the lab forever. She would never fully be free of it. And though she returned to her life, publishing her accounts for the world to see, she always felt the pull in quiet moments, the whisper at the edge of sleep, the fleeting shadow in a doorway. The spirit laboratory had claimed its place in her, and in some strange, eternal way, she had become part of it. The city slept, oblivious, but the lab waited, always. And somewhere inside, among the shadows and whispers, the story continued, unbroken, as the cycle of curiosity, fear, and the human spirit endured.